If we were to shut down the entire global economy for 41 years, we would have achieved the brilliant result of forestalling 1 Celsius degree of temperature increase, that's all, and only then if the UN's wildly exaggerated estimates of the effect of CO2 on temperature are accurate. Here then is what happens if you have an ETS. We know this because we've already got one in Britain. It's not ours, it's imposed on us by the commissars of the European Union, whom we do not elect, cannot hold to account, cannot question, cannot remove, and cannot replace. We are no longer free. You still have a democracy here. You can still do something about this ETS. If, on the other hand, you charge a high enough price for emitting a ton of carbon that then it actually makes a difference and deters people from emitting tons of carbon, what do they then do? They go somewhere else. They get out of Australia and they take their businesses and your jobs with them, and they set up in China, which I can tell you for free is not going to have an emissions trading scheme, not anytime soon. They set up there, and there, per unit of production, the carbon emissions are going to be higher than they are here, so you have the effect of A, destroying your own jobs, B, destroying the Australian economy, C, destroying the tax base that pays for everything that the Australian government does, and D, you increase the carbon footprint of the planet. Now, how lunatic is that? Now, let me make it clear to you that I am not taking sides in your politics. It's not for me as a guest in your country to do that. But hey, you know what I'm thinking. Now, the West, frankly, is not the problem anymore. You just have to look at this graph compiled for me by Dr. David Archibald from data obtained from the annual statistical communiques of the People's Republic of China, where they tell us what they're going to do. And in a dictatorship, when they tell you what they're going to do, that's what's going to happen. And what they say is that they're going to increase the amount of coal-fired power stations by 1 or 2 per week, more or less indefinitely for the foreseeable future. And that's what happens to their carbon emissions if you do. And you can see that the Australian ones are down there along the bottom. So even if we actually shut down Australia, which it looks as though some of your pollies would like to achieve, it's not going to make any difference to the climate. An enormous sacrifice, death and destruction everywhere, and absolutely no benefit to the climate whatsoever. So now, the political cost. I want to talk very briefly about this because this one we may have won. We must be cautious because the forces of darkness are regrouping as we speak. They're going to have another go in Mexico. Yes, we drove them snivelling back into their noisome lairs at Copenhagen. Now, what I'm going to show you now was buried on the website of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, buried there under the following sexy, catchy, and revealing title. Note by the Secretariat of the States Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that was a 2-page note. But my very talented colleague, Dr. Willie Soon, of the Harvard-Smithsonian Institute for Astrophysics, who reads everything and is suspicious, thought that the file size of that document, publicly available on the UN's website, seemed a little long just for a 2-page note. So he looked at the annex, which was 186 pages long, and that was the draft Treaty of Copenhagen. And this is what it proposed: a world government. The scheme for the new institutional arrangement, the New World Order, under the convention, will be based on 3 basic pillars. I can see why Hitler just loved giving speeches like this. Government, facilitative mechanism, and financial mechanism. But there is the word government, plain as a pikestaff in paragraph 38 of schedule, no, it was Annex 1, that's right, of the Copenhagen Treaty draft as of September the 15th last year. And here it is again. The government will be ruled by the conference of the parties with the support of a new subsidiary body on adaptation and of an executive board responsible for the management of the new funds and the related facilitative processes and bodies. Yep, there you are, the government. And the facilitative mechanism was going to give them the right to interfere, among other things, in all formerly free markets. Now, most of us here would probably agree that the free market, whatever our politics, is on the whole a good thing. Well, that's not what this treaty said. This treaty was going to let the market rules, the conditions under which all markets operate, be set by this new government. And at vast economic cost. These were just some of the taxes that were going to be levied on us. I'm glad to say that very, very, very nearly all of this did not survive into the final draft, precisely because you in Australia and in the United States and in Canada got onto your elected representatives and made such a noise that they abandoned this draft even before the Copenhagen conference began. And here are the democratic provisions for the election of the new world government. As you will see, they are very full, very comprehensive, very detailed, very much not there. There weren't any. This was going to be just like the EU writ large. There were going to be commissars, appointed goodness knows how, goodness knows by whom, answerable to goodness knows whom, but they weren't going to be answerable to us, the people. Now here are the 10 people, 9 with Kevin Rudd, who went to Copenhagen. And here are another 10. And another 10. 60, that's 70. We're still going strong here. He needed real support in Copenhagen, this guy. Are we going to reach 100? Does anybody think? Yes. Yes, we are. There we are. 100. And, oh, we haven't finished yet. No, no, no. Yeah, 110, and here's the final total, 114 freeloaders. And this is a phenomenon. I don't want to single out your government. A lot of other governments did the same. They're prepared to tell you that your workers' jobs have got to be handed over to the Indians and the Chinese in the name of saving the planet, when in fact all you'll do, if anything, is to add to the carbon footprint of the planet by sending those jobs to less efficient countries overseas. And while they're telling you to make the ultimate sacrifices of paying 4 times as much for your electricity and losing your jobs, they also go on freeloading junkets to Copenhagen with a carbon footprint greater than most families will achieve in a lifetime. And I think, I'm afraid, that's disgusting. Yeah. There is only one question that needs to be answered in the whole of this debate. How much warming will a given increase in CO2 concentration actually cause? That's the question. This is a moral issue for our generation. How do I know? Because he says so. And he is right. It is a moral issue. It is a moral issue when a climate panel deliberately tampers with data and forces every number towards the extreme so as to multiply by approximately 7 the true warming effect to be expected from CO2 concentration. That is a moral issue. It is a moral issue when it abolishes the medieval warm period, when it knows perfectly well that there was one. That is a moral issue. But above all, if you impose policies on the world which lead to the starvation of millions, that is a moral issue. But this is, thank God, Australia. Now these little African children with their hopeless, hopeful eyes, they turn to Australia as I turn to Australia. And they say to you, as I say to you, about this entire climate nonsense, enough is enough.